so excited for the guests that I have lined up. And my guest today is Pat Samples, and I'm thrilled to have her. Thank you, Pat. Pat and I have known each other for almost 19 years. So let's just round it up to 20 years. And she and I first met at a conference. More than likely it was an elder care conference. I'm going to guess. I don't know exactly which one. I was living in California and Pat's based in Minnesota, in the Minneapolis area. And she, her work is very much about taking care of the caregiver. It's very much about aging gracefully, and there's so many other aspects. We just had an instant connection from the beginning, and a lot was based on life experience and her education, which includes an MA in human development, which had an emphasis on conscious aging, adult learning, and body wisdom, as well as an MFA in creative writing. And so for the past 20 years, she has been giving talks and workshops across the US on how to find peace of mind as a caregiver. She's also been a TEDx speaker, and she's a multitude of wonderful things that I just love and I connected to immediately when we first met. She's a writer in the healthcare spiritual space. She's a consultant in creative self-expression, a teacher, so teaching nonfiction writing to older adults, and then a teacher and a guide relative to body awareness and practices through essential motion. So all of that is, I put it in a big category of conscious aging, creativity in aging, body wisdom, and then certainly peace of mind for caregivers. I'll rattle off some of her books, not all of them. I think there may be 8 or 9 of them at this point. So those that are special to the caregiving world are Daily Comforts for Caregivers, Self-Care for Caregivers, a 12-step approach, and Comfort and Be Comforted, Reflections for Caregivers. And it's just, again, thrilling. You can learn more about Pat at patsamples.com. There's one thing before we jump into Pat and having Pat talk is we were chatting the other day a bit, and there's something that she's going to talk about and weave in as we keep going, and that is there are 2 voices of caregivers. Really, I guess the best place to start is, Pat, is to ask you, what drew you to this path of work?
Well, thanks, Todd, for having me. And I'm always very happy to share some thoughts with caregivers, because I just know that every caregiver needs a lot of support and is very wise. So I want to draw on both of those things. And I got interested in this because I actually met a caregiver of someone with dementia about 20 years ago. And I was very, very touched by the way that he cared so much for his wife. And at 84 years old, he was losing his energy. He was losing his capacity to hold himself up. And yet he loved her so deeply. And I could see that someone like him needed more resources, kind of more internal strength, more internal, needed to be able to draw on that inner wisdom that was there in order to sustain himself over time. And he really touched me so much by his care that I said, I want to be able to support people like that. So I began to do some looking into learning more about caregiving, and in the process, used a lot of the learning I had done in some of my spiritual studies and some of my work with 12-step programs, and to develop kind of a way to approach caregiving so that you can have peace of mind. Because I really do believe that you can have peace of mind when you're caregiving. It may not feel like it on a lot of days, but I really believe you can have it And that's because I believe that we all have the answers inside of ourselves that we really need. And that's where the peace of mind comes from. So I'd like to offer some ideas about how that can happen. That's where I'm going to start from. It's just saying I really came to care about caregivers. This one man's story touched my heart. And
That's sweet. That's a really sweet story. I remember you told me that, and it is very touching. And I guess we all are touched in a way that has sort of that aha moment that moves us in a direction, no matter what we're doing. We have that influence, and that one was obviously incredibly special to you. So how does this translate to caregiving and patient advocates? And I think we're going to look at it in a couple of ways. So the first way being the 30,000-foot view, meaning, based on the stressors of the healthcare system and of everyday life. How do you see that affecting caregivers? You've obviously done a lot of work with caregivers over time. So if we can look at it, let's first look at it at that level. What pulls upon them that makes it so challenging?
I really think we start out as caregiving it's an act of love and an act of witness and wonder. We're taking care of somebody because we love them. We witness all the changes that go on. There's some of them painful, some of them beautiful, as people find, maybe even in the process, we get to a state of wonder where we get connected with the sacred and the preciousness of life and the preciousness of our relationships. So all of that is happening, and we have all these different thoughts and feelings. And yet, because the challenges of caregiving are so massive, it's a burden. It's a huge burden. There's no getting away from it. So we can't just be Pollyanna and say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna be loving and that'll take care of it. Of course, it's not that simple. But as I see it, the burden most of the burden is actually internal. It's those messages we give ourselves of this is too much, or I'm not doing it right, or I wish I knew more, and we get scared and we get anxious and resentful, and it can spiral into burnout in a hurry. And I think worry is one of the first things that I think every caregiver can say, identify with very quickly. I think of worry as love turned to overcare. It's kind of stewing over and over things and imagining the worst case scenarios. And I think of a song that was popular when I was young by Glenn Yarborough that was called "Worry is a Rocking Chair. You go back and forth, but you get nowhere." That's
like
kind
that.
of why I see worry. And I'm very skilled at worrying. I had an excellent teacher. My mother was really, really good at it. She would go, and she'd never exhale. I mean, she would just, worry was big. So it's an example of, I think, some of the things that really plague the caregiver and trip us up.
Do you have some examples? Don't have to be identified anybody, but some examples along your path of individuals that come to mind, like caregivers that you met along the way that just were like, oh my gosh, I need to help this person, or I hope this person can.
I think of a person I knew quite well who I tried to be supportive toward, and she was taking care of her dad. She was living in a senior building with him, even though she was a young, quote, senior. And his needs were so intense that she had, and they were this little tiny apartment, and there was just no breathing room for her, and the stress level got so severe that they ended up getting, they're both very kind, gentle people, but they ended up having a kind of a big fight because it just got to be too much. And, he didn't think she was cared enough, and she didn't think he understood what it was costing her to have to give her whole life to this. So
Was she able to find peace? Do you know if she was able to find some peace of mind through this all, and how did she go about that?
She really did. And I think I want to just share with you a quote from Melody Beatty from her book, Codependent No More, because I think it helps to illustrate this. Worrying, obsessing, and controlling our illusions. They're tricks we play on ourselves. We feel like we're doing something to solve our problems, but we're not. And, and I just really love that
So well said.
that quote, because I think in her case, she saw that it was an internal thing, and that if she was going to have any peace of mind, she was going to need to find the resources to help take care of him beyond what she was going to be able to do. She started to just get real honest with herself. And I think worry is a good example of this thing that I like to talk about a lot, which is our first voice. It's that survival voice. It's that kind of instinctive, protective survival response, really, that we have, and it takes over and it kind of chokes off our energy. We get tense. In fact, the word worry comes from an Anglo-Saxon word meaning to worry or to choke or to strangle. Boy, worry is like that. It's like, I don't know about you, but I get real tense in my neck when I worry. And some people get backaches and some people get migraines. And I mean, we have our body is a big messenger that tells us that we're in that survival voice, in that survival state. But we do have a second voice available to us. And that second voice is really that voice of love. It's that trust we have in some kind of spiritual good. It's our common sense. It's a loving and nurturing voice that really comforts us and gives us courage and strength. And so the more we can get in touch with that voice, the more we can start to make wiser decisions for ourselves. I pulled out the book, Daily Comforts for Caregivers, which you mentioned. It's a daily book of meditations, as you know. And I thought I'd just read one of the short meditations in here just to give an idea of what I'm talking about this first voice and second voice, because I think it illustrates it pretty well.
Sure.
So this one is called Living in Today. I spend a lot of my time wondering and worrying about what will happen tomorrow, next week, next year. I get fearful that my loved one won't be able to manage, and neither will I. I'm afraid that money, time, and energy will run out. It's easy to get hooked into concentrating on the future. And of course, it's wise to prepare for the future as best as I can. But keeping my thoughts churning about possible future catastrophes is a waste of time and energy. It raises my blood pressure and makes me tense and unhappy. If I spend my energy absorbed in tomorrow's potential problems, I can't enjoy whatever's in front of me right now. The present moment is really all I have, and I don't want to miss it. I leave the future to the future and live in the now. So I don't know if you could hear the two different voices there. That first one of the worry, the stress, the overwhelm, and the second one saying, if I'm constantly focusing on future catastrophes, I'm really wasting my energy. And let me see how I can bring myself more into the now. So that's one example of, and I know my friend, got to this place where she could find that she had a deep spiritual life, and she just kind of went in and just really got clear that, at least for her, it was best for her and her dad if he got an outside care, and that she found a different place to live, and it worked out really well.
I know we touched on the 4 different things, like the successes that you've experienced through your work, and there's 4 different, I don't know if they're considered concepts. You can properly define them. So there's peace of mind, finding inner resources, interior spirit, and looking within. So how do you separate those and in the processes?
Yeah, well, and I would say I really don't separate them. They're all part of the same story. They're part of this whole process that I believe is really important. It's getting clear about what's the disturbing message that we're carrying around, going within to listen deeply within ourselves, to find the greater truth to find what we really know deep down inside of us, to find that truth that's more, that's calmer, that's more wholesome for us and for the people around us. Another really good example of one of those first survival voices is guilt. I'm not doing enough. I should have been there. I'm not, I'm not smart enough. I don't know what I should be doing. I'm from Minnesota, and I think guilt is a state religion here. We're really good at it. But it's, guilt is that it's kind of a self-condemning voice. It focuses on what we've done wrong, on the mistakes. And so then, we often end up trying to do more to compensate. And it becomes kind of like an infestation. Then we do more and more and more trying to make up for, not necessarily do more to do a better job. We're doing more in order not to feel guilty. So we kind of get into this spin, and it's not helpful. So we want to move from that self-condemning voice of guilt to a second voice of sanity and balance slipping in there. So that's, again, the process that I keep bringing people to is what do we know deep inside of ourselves? What do we find here? Another example of a first voice is wanting to have control, feeling very powerless. I don't know a caregiver that doesn't experience that, because there is so much powerlessness over all the medications and the healthcare system and all of this. And it's kind of like, well, if people would just shape up, if the healthcare system would shape up, if the person I was taking care of would just do what I tell them, if my relatives would just help or get out of the way, we get into that. And we really can't control anybody else's thoughts, feelings, or emotions. We can't. So I'm going to share one other reading from the book, because I think this whole process is really based, this is the model that I think really has been, people have found really, really helpful. So I just want to share more of that. This one is called Wanting Control. No one understands as well as I do what my loved one needs. If I'm away for a day or even a few minutes, it seems that somebody screws something up. I'd like to take a break, but how can I when I'm the only one who can get things done right? I have to laugh at myself sometimes when I realize how much I want to be in control. I'm so sure I'm right. I'm like a sergeant giving orders and making sure things get done. But when I think I have to take command like that, I never get to let up. I end up tense and tired a lot. Of course, it's just possible that other people who are helping me with my loved one's care are also smart and thoughtful people. They may do things in ways I wouldn't, but that doesn't make them wrong. They make mistakes, but so do I. And they're usually not that serious. Maybe I could give others some slack and give myself a breather.
You must have been watching me over the past 3 years.
Oh, okay, that rang true, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's been a journey for me to get better with that. And nobody's perfect. I'm far from perfect, but I've had to ebb and flow with that. And that's certainly been part of my journey, is to let go of that. And boy, that hit home for sure.
I know that we do have within us that wisdom that can help us get out of those traps, that second voice. And it's that sane wisdom voice, that transcendental voice, that a voice of reassurance and inspiration, comfort, tolerance, balance, those kind of things. It's that let go voice. And by let go, I don't mean give up. I mean open up, allowing something bigger and better to possibly happen. In fact, I want to ask you to do a little exercise with me if you're game.
I'll be out of the screen if I stand up, so I'll stay seated.
All right, stay seated. All right, so this is kind of fun. All right, so I want you to put your right hand out in front of you like so, and you're gonna move it around to the right as far as you can go, and stop when you get as far as you can go without being uncomfortable, and look on the wall and see where you're pointing.
Oh, I'm supposed to keep looking straight ahead. Okay, sorry about that.
No, look at on the wall so you can see where your hand ended up. So you could easily find that spot again. Okay, and now bring your hand back around to the front and drop it to your side. Okay, now I'd like you to close your eyes. And this time, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand up in front of you again, like you did before. And you're going to move it around to the right as far as you can go. And then I want you to open your eyes and see where you landed. What happened?
I went further.
You did.
Was that the intention?
Well, how come? How did that happen?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I don't know either, but I like to think of this as an example of how we get stuck. We get stuck at just how far we think what we think we know, or what's supposed to happen. And when we go inside, close our eyes and get quiet, we have the possibility of going beyond where we get stuck. So that's just an exercise to illustrate that, and that wisdom, that additional perspective might come from our spiritual beliefs, or from our imagination, or our dreams, or from some favorite sayings like let go and let God, or some people say the serenity prayer, or there might be some slogan that helps you get there. It might just come from shifting from the head down into the heart, and letting the heart be what directs what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Wherever it's coming from, it's available for us 24/7. We don't have to call a helpline for it. We don't have to wait till we can talk to somebody about it. It's right in here. It's right in here. And that's when we access that, we can breathe a little more deeply and be really present, and not get so stuck in our ways. I mean, they're supposed to do it this way and they didn't do it this way, and I'm really upset because I didn't do it this way. I mean, those are the kind of conversations we have with ourselves. And it's possible to go beyond those and let all that go and open up to something that's more peaceful.
Yeah, I know, key for me, and I'm curious if and how you have incorporated this into your work, which I'm sure you have to some degree. So for me, when I'm stressed about it, and there's a direct correlation, like for everybody, depending upon what's at stake and the level of the problem, what's happening, the acuity of is it an acute situation or is it a chronic situation? Things and that's just a natural. Unfortunately, starting in the 90s, I started meditating. And so I can call upon that at any time. And so I have a regular meditative practice, but there are also and I tell people this all the time. I share with them, do a 1-minute meditation. Like, I've never meditated. So I was just doing it with a friend the other day. I think I might have mentioned that to you. I just said, close your eyes and just think of the most calming place that you can think of, and slowly breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth for just a minute. That's it. And that's the one thing that I do. If I'm in a hospital and there's something crazy going on or wherever, I can take that minute usually.
That's perfect. That's just perfect, Todd. That's an excellent example of how to do this. Like you say, it only takes a minute, because people say, I don't have time to meditate. Well, you might have to practice a little bit before you kind of get the hang of it, but you can just stop and get quiet in your mind for a minute. You can just notice your breath for a while. You can stop and look at a plant that's blossoming and spend a few moments just enjoying the beauty of something, or look out the window at the clouds and watch the shape of the clouds. You can, look for something, and everybody's going to be different as to what's going to help you slow yourself down, make you feel safe, help you feel valued, that gives you energy rather than taking it. Everybody has different ways of doing that. So I can't predict a particular way that's going to work for each person. But in some ways, they're all a form of meditation. It might be somebody just goes for a walk and they feel better, or somebody gives themselves a hand massage and they feel better. So it's those little things of self-care that start to open up the possibility of getting into that little meditative state that you're talking about. And it's not that difficult really to do meditation. And we could just take a minute if you're willing to do that right now with folks who are listening in, and we can all just spend a moment, if that'd be all right with you, and I can just kind of guide that.
I'd love that. How about if we end with that?
Okay, we can do that. We can do that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That'd be a wonderful way to bring it all back around. I have a question for you that there's a number of questions, but one is, so one of the challenges that I have found with people over time when it comes to meditation is they view it as too new agey, and they can't get beyond the word meditation. I imagine you've come across that as well. Mm-hmm. How do you address that with people at that point? Do you give it a different name?
Well, for some people, it can be just called prayer. For some people, that's very helpful. It can also be just take a moment to have a sense of wonder and curiosity. Just be curious what's there beyond those difficult thoughts. What else might be there? What's the next, just step into a state of possibility for a moment. What if? There's all kinds of ways to kind of get into that interior space. But it is about opening ourselves up, expanding our horizons. And I think of it both as expanding and deepening, going to that quiet, and at least for me, that quiet place inside is where the solution is. And for somebody else, it might be spending time with your pet or your cup of coffee, and you're just sitting and letting your mind get quiet for a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a good point about calling it something other than meditation. It may be meditative what they are doing, but it doesn't have to have that title to it. Because now, one of the challenges for people, and me and everybody who's a caregiver, patient advocate, when you're in certain circumstances, one of the challenges for people in general, let alone in these types of situations, is the connection between head and heart. And that can be a challenge, even more of a challenge when you're in an acute situation where everything is just heightened, and there's the cutoff, because you feel if you go into your heart, you're not going to be able to function and think properly. How do you deal with that? And what do you share with people when you come upon them and they're talking like that?
Well, one of the ways that I'm getting more comfortable with those kind of situations is to really be more clearly in my body. And I know that's a strange term that for some people, of course I'm in my body. What do you mean? But an example of that is just to feel your feet on the floor. And I know when I do that, it takes a little bit of attention for a moment, but just moving my feet and feeling them, it's like I kind of get like I land, and I land with the whole of me here. And so I think we want to be able to make those decisions from our whole selves. We want our mind, we want our body, we want our heart, all of that to be present. And so doing some things to really bring ourselves grounded in our body can be really, really helpful. And again, I mean, it might even be just rubbing your hands together, feeling your feet, taking that breath that feels refreshing, shrugging shoulders. I mean, there's lots of little ways to sort of, we can say to relax, but I think it's more to just make room, kind of make room for yourself. When we're stressed out, it's like part of us is sort of pinched off. We can't think clearly. We can't, things feel out of whack. And so we kind of need our body and mind and spirit all to line up. So if we can get a little bit quiet, if we can tap into being present in some area of our body, and put, sometimes just putting your hand on your heart, that's another way to just draw attention to
Right.
your heart and calm yourself. So there's a lot of little tools out there, and I don't pretend to be the expert on those tools. What I do like to offer is that you do have that wisdom within you, and when you do those simple things to take care of yourself, you can have access to those, and you can make choices that you can feel good about, and that leave you at peace rather than strained.
So now that we've talked about all of this, I'll just bring it back around to caregivers and patient advocates. So with their limited time and energy, outside of their responsibilities as caregiver, patient advocate, maybe as parent, maybe as a coworker, whatever they may to do, and other than reading your books and contacting you, what would be your suggestion for how they get started with something like this? Because we know there are a lot of people who just aren't there, who don't have that practice, whether you call it meditation, you call it whatever or whatever. They just are so bottled up, like that ball of yarn that's just so close. What suggestions would you have for them to get started?
Well, the first thing I would do would be to give people permission to have whatever experience they're having. And they don't have, there's nothing that has to be changed in how they're interacting. So if they're really worried and upset, you can just go ahead and be worried and upset for a while and get that out of your system. Just if you need to shout that while you're inside go inside the car and close the door and yell to get that, or do a wild dance, or that's something I do. I get up and move around and just let my body just go wildly free when I'm frustrated. So I think just being, and then just really noticing noticing what is that distressing message that I'm giving myself, and is there any other possibility? Is there something in me that kind of knows better, kind of like is the caring adult, if you will, that can see the little 2-year-old in me that's terrified and scared and wants my mommy and wants my way and is frustrated because things aren't going the way they should. We can look for that quiet adult, and maybe you didn't have a quiet adult in your life, so you can make one up. Or you can think of it as a prayer, think of it as a holy figure that you value, that can be there to help you get just kind of quiet things down, so you can tap into that what deep inside yourself, which is that you want to be a loving person, that you want to be generous, that you want to be really present and caring. I mean, we all want that as caregivers. So kind of holding the vision of who it is we want to be, and noticing where we are, and noticing that by very gentle means we can go inside to find that other way, that other perspective that's going to help ease us into peace of mind.
Thank you. Wonderful insight. And yeah, I always, even though I share with people, so it's always good to hear this back, and hearing it from you is just wonderful.
I'm glad.
So, yeah, me too. So thank you.
Yes.
So you had in mind a little while ago about a meditation of sorts, or you had something in mind, and what are you thinking?
I think if you're willing, whoever's listening watching is willing to close eyes. You don't have to. You can just look down in your lap or wherever is comfortable. And just feel your hands, feel them on your lap or on a chair, wherever they are. Just feel them. Feel their temperature, feel them touching the surface they're touching. adjust them till they're as comfortable as possible. And just appreciate your hands right now. They certainly work all day long to help you do the caregiving that you do, to do all the things you do. So just like take a moment to appreciate your hands and let that just really take that moment to notice, well, my goodness, my hands lift things, they carry things, they push and pull things, they caress someone, they feed me. I mean, there's so many things our hands do. So just being attentive to our hands for a moment and being really, really grateful we have them. We take them for granted. So just being grateful we have them. And then noticing that gratitude, that spirit of gratitude that's there as you appreciate your hands. And let that spirit of gratitude expand. And let whatever other thoughts may be there, of worry or distress or confusion, whatever might be there, just kind of let those dissolve away and sit in the state of gratitude. Just gratitude for your hands, gratitude for your breath, gratitude for being alive, gratitude for whatever support you get from others, gratitude for whatever matters to you that really supports you and pleases you. And let that take over your heart. And just sit for just a few seconds of silence in that place of gratitude. Let it be there. And just notice while you're in that state of gratitude if your body is relaxing anymore. Notice if some of those stresses and tensions that were there maybe are a little less. Just allow yourself to stay in that state of gratitude, even as you begin to open your eyes and bring your attention back to our being together. Trust that that state of gratitude is a good place from which to make the decisions you need to make.
Thank you very much for that meditation, and thank you for being here. Means a lot to me. I really appreciate it, and I will look forward to other people learning about what you have to share.
Well, I know that you are clearly a person of great wisdom, and so you have that within you, and I'm glad that you're using it in this way. And I hope all the people that are tuned in to this podcast are remembering that they have a corner of wisdom that they can trust and that they can turn to.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I'm going to wish you best of health.
Thank you.
Take good care, and I'm sure we will be in touch.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
The primary purpose of the podcast is to educate. While guests are invited to listen, listeners acknowledge that they are not being provided professional advice from the podcast or any guests. One Day, One Week and its sponsor, 17 Commerce LLC, expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use the podcast episodes or the information presented in the episodes.